Good morning, friends. I am very pleased to meet you once again with our topic Import Export Correspondence. I am Professor Vasan Joshi from G.B. Shah Commerce College. I am pleased to introduce my friend Professor N.S. Trivedi sir. He is a very veteran and a very experienced fellow. He has worked in a bank, in a nationalized bank, for about 40 years in various positions as divisional manager, regional manager, etc. He is also having very good exposure in the import-export correspondence and the practical procedure also. So we are very lucky to have such a veteran figure with us for this topic, friends. Friends, as you know, from the very beginning, we can say in the beginning of the world or in the beginning of the civilization, all the people have remained, or all the people of various countries have been actively engaged or involved in import-export correspondence or import-export trade. In the very beginning, the Indus Valley civilization, let us take an example, or Roman, Egyptian, any civilization we take an example. For example, they had been very actively engaged, involved in import-export trade. They had crossed the borders of their countries for their trade and commerce. Nowadays, as the whole world is becoming like a village, as a global village, so any country, for example, no country can produce or manufacture all the things which it requires. So naturally, what it will do? For example, India is the largest exporter of tea and clothes and spices. We export these things to various countries all over the world. On the other hand, we import goods like fuels, for example, petrol, diesel, gas, computer parts, heavy machinery from various countries all over the world. Friends, this is called the import-export trade, and today we are going to talk on this import-export correspondence. It is the topic in almost final year become degree year in all the universities of Gujarat. So first of all, let me tell you about the topics or about the letters to be studied. What are the topics, what are the letters we are going to discuss in this today's lecture. For example, first of all, any businessman who wants to purchase the goods, naturally he would like to have information about it. So first of all, he will send a letter of inquiry, that is inquiry sent to an overseas manufacturer and inquiry from a prospective importer from abroad to an Indian manufacturer. So whatever goods he wants to purchase, he will send an inquiry asking about the prices, terms and conditions, how much time the exporter will take in delivering the goods. So all these points he would mention in the inquiry letter, and there can be the reply to the above letters from the exporter. The next letters.
So far as the letter of credit is concerned, you are well aware that there are different types of the letter of credit. And why this letter of credit? Because the importers and exporters, in most of the cases, they do not know each other. And that is why this instrument has become a worldwide. It is a kind of the guarantee. In the case of guarantee, there are 3 parties, whereas in the letter of credit, there are 4 parties. The importer, suppose if he wants to import certain goods from the overseas, he has no knowledge about the exporter, but he can gather the information by writing letters through various sources, and he can gather the information about the exporter. He will approach the bank that he wishes to import certain goods from the exporter, for which he is known as the opening bank. The bank will send his guarantee to the exporter's bank, and exporter's bank in turn will give guarantee to the exporter that in case the importer fails to repay the dues or repay the amount of the exported goods, then the bankers will be held responsible. So ultimate responsibility lies on the shoulder of the importer's bank. So that is known as the letter of credit. Now, in the case of letter of credit, it is more or less a kind of the contract. What we have the contract act and uniform custom and practice for documentary credit. The letter of credit is almost uniform, or we can say that all are in the same lines, in which the opener has to give the details of his own credentials, the addresses, contact number, then which goods he wants to import. That is, the importer wants to import the goods. Thereafter, he has to decide how much quantity, what should be the quantity, and apart from that, by which mode that goods should be imported. That is by way of sea, by way of air, or by way of any other mode. Because you see, there are several countries where the seashore is not available, and there are certain countries where the different countries are attached with the roads. So that is also possible. So in this way, the letter of credit has to be decided. Then certain terms and conditions are also required to be imposed, in which what should be the insurance, what should be the general insurance, what should be the export credit, ECGC premium, etc. So these are all the terms and conditions. Then loading, unloading, then other charges, freight charges, and several other charges are required to be incorporated in the letter of credit. In fact, see, as you know, in commercial correspondence, that no ornamental languages are required to be inserted. Only very simple language is required to be inserted. And see, the importer or exporter, they are concerned with the terms and conditions lying in the letter of credit. So it is, one has to be very meticulous so far as the terms and conditions in the letters of credit are there, and in that way the letter of credit has to be because while writing a letter to the bank, one has to be very accurate, and so far as the spelling, comma, etc. are there, that has to be there too. And once this has been handed over to the bank, then bank will send this letter of credit to the exporter's bank, and exporter's bank will in turn hand over this to the exporter, and whatever terms and conditions, whatever other important facts are available in the letter of credit, the exporter is supposed to adhere to this. And if any lacuna or any mistake is there, then it is very likely that the goods exported may be returned by the importer, or importer may raise certain objections. Of course, there are ways and means that in case of mistake, so before the dispatch of the exported goods, there can be number of amendments to the letter of credit, for which the importer has to write to the bank, and through bank in turn to the exporter's bank and the exporter. So these types of the amendments can take place, and ultimately the entire transaction can take place. So this is the very important instrument which is known as the letter of credit. In short, it is also known as the kind of the guarantee, and irrevocable. It is not cancelable. It is not cancelable. Why? It can be cancelled or it can be amended, but with the consent of all the four parties, that is the importer, importer's bank, exporter's bank, and the exporter. And this is possible only before the dispatch of the goods by the exporter. So this is the short prima facie about the letter of credit. In most of the banks, certain forms are available in which certain particulars are required, and other things can be taken into consideration. Sir.
Yes, friends. The next letter is the exporter's intimation regarding the shipment. Friends, in your first year BCom you have studied the order letters and the execution of orders. As you know, once the order is placed, the supplier or the manufacturer will forward the goods to the buyer or to the purchaser. Here, as it is import-export correspondence, so it is not possible to forward the goods, to supply the goods by bus or train or by a special truck or vehicle. So naturally, they need to forward the goods by ship or a seaway. So as soon as the order is received by the purchaser, by the exporter, they will load the goods in a ship. They will send the goods to the concerned country from where the order they have received by a ship. It is called the shipment of the goods. So after having the goods loaded in a ship, the exporter will intimate to the importer that we have forwarded your goods through this or that ship. That is called the intimation regarding the shipment. Now, I would like to tell you about the types of correspondence.
Now, there are different types of the correspondence. One, the exporter as well as the importer both have to undertake. Now, first of all, suppose if the importer wishes to import certain goods, then he will have to write to the exporters. Exporter can be in a foreign country, and it is very likely that the importer might not be knowing in which country he is available or from where he is to ship. So in that case, while writing a letter to the exporter, the importer has to take care that all the necessary terms and conditions and the details of the goods are taken into consideration. And second thing, that there are certain countries where there cannot be direct import or export, because all the different countries are having the different rules. So some countries may adhere that the goods which are to be imported or exported should be through certain channels, that is the government channel. So in that case, in that case, he will have to stick to the terms and conditions and the rules and regulations of that particular country, and as far as possible, whatever is to be written, that should be point wise, and again no full further details or unnecessary details are to be incorporated, and as far as possible it should be minimum and point wise. Sir.
Yes, friends, in first year we have studied the letters, but those letters were written between two businessmen within the country. So a businessman in India, for example, he places an order with a businessman or business firm in Kolkata or in Guwahati or in Chennai, or a businessman from Mumbai places an order to another businessman in Delhi or in any other part of the country. That is called domestic correspondence. And if the correspondence is done between two parties across the borders, beyond the borders, for example, any businessman from India wants to export goods from outside, for example, computer parts from China, or for example, automobile parts from any of the country of France or Japan. So it is called international correspondence, or we can call it import-export correspondence.
Now, the parties in import-export correspondence. Now, there are generally two parties, that is the importer and exporters. But so far as the exporter is concerned, one, he is either a manufacturer exporter or he can also be a merchant exporter. The manufacturer exporter export the goods directly to the importer, whereas the merchant exporter, he is purchasing the goods from the manufacturer and he is arranging for exporting the goods to the importer. So it depends which type of the category the exporter or importer is. the exporters and importers both are having the same situation, because so far as the documentation part is concerned, both have to adhere to the general documentation theory and uniform custom and practice for documentary credit. So these are all the parties. And second thing, that so far as the manufacturers, so far as the exporter is concerned, he has also some parties abroad who can be the importer. Now they cannot be the third party, but they can be agent, that exporter's agent. That exporter can be having the agency arrangement, or he can also have the sister concern of his own firm. So this type of the parties available in the import export correspondence, and according to need, such correspondence are initiated. Now, so far as the parties in import export concerns, now banks, say for example, because both the importers and exporters, they are supposed to carry out their communication and correspondence with the banks. Why banks? Because so far as the India is concerned, almost all the transactions regarding the import and export should be routed through banks. That is known as so banks are also known as the authorized agents in foreign exchange. Those banks which are designated to carry out the import and export business, they are known as the authorized dealers in foreign exchange. Now, importer or exporter, importer if wishes to open an LC, he can approach the bank for opening an LC. Even exporter, if he wishes to export the goods, then after exporting the goods as per the rule, he can submit all the documents to the bank, and bank will give negotiation. In case of delay, certain, because as per the rule, the payment has to be received at least not more than 180 days, but generally within 60 to 90 days the export realization has to be received. In that case, they will have to take into confidence the banks. And second thing, that so far as the government departments are concerned, we are having the two governments, central government and state governments. The state government is controlling the VAT, value added tax, whereas the central government is controlling the excise and custom. Excise is because exporter, when he manufactures certain goods, then he is supposed to pay the central excise, and thereafter while exporting the goods he has to pay the custom duties. Of course, in certain cases or in many cases, when the export takes place, thereafter he can claim for whatever duties like central excise or custom duties. He can claim for the refund, and he is eligible. Different schemes are there, and for that matter the correspondence has to be initiated by the importer and exporter, both to the state government as well as the central government. Now thereafter comes the IEC, Import Export Code Number. If anybody is engaged or anybody wishes to engage himself in the import export business, then IEC number is compulsory. Without IEC number, no import or no export can take place, because
Sir, I think it's a kind of license to
exactly
yes, I think.
exactly I do agree.
Yes.
Because we may say, of course license is not there, but it is a compulsory. So on the strength of this IEC number,
Yes.
the government can come to know or the custom department or excise department can come to know that
Yes.
he's already registered for this purpose.
So after having
Yes.
received this IEC code,
Uh,
then only we are allowed to have
Yes,
import export business.
without IEC
So it
code
is
number,
compulsory.
no export or no export import can take place.
Yes.
And second thing, that IEC number is permanent, because so long as you wish to continue in the import export business, the IEC number has to be maintained. Even if you suspend your business for the time being, even then IEC number will continue. And second thing, that for Export Promotion Council, if you are importer or exporter, then you have to be a member of, generally exporter, he has to be a member of the Export Promotion Council, because for claiming the duties, they are helping. Even in another way, we can say that it is a kind of the association of the manufacturers of the similar kind of the items, and they can also initiate for promoting your goods to the overseas, indirect advertisements. And second thing, they are having very good rapport with the government departments. So in case
I
of
think,
difficulty,
for example, if somebody is not doing import export business on a very large scale, he can also he may not go directly for the
Directly.
importing or exporting the goods.
Yes.
But friends, as you see on the slide, there are indent houses. We call
yes.
them indent houses.
Yes.
So indent houses, what are the indent houses?
Yes.
They are a kind of agent or middleman helping in import export trade.
Yeah.
So for example, if he himself doesn't want to get the IEC code from the government for the import export business or trade, he can go to the indent houses and he can buy or he can sell the goods via or using this link as an agent or middleman. So this also can be done instead of getting the IEC code if he himself doesn't want to be engaged directly in the import export trade.
yes. Sir, here I wish to add
Yes, sir.
that indent houses are, we have discussed that they are known as the merchant exporters.
Yes.
And they are purchasing the goods from the manufacturers. They are not the exporters. So exporters may not be having IEC number.
Yes.
But the merchant exporter is supposed to have the IEC number. And on the strength of this IEC number, merchant exporter can export the goods. And second thing, that certain benefits like deemed export, etc., are also available to the exporter who has not directly exported the goods. So this kind of the facilities are available from the government to such deemed exporters. And second thing, that in order to help the exporter, we are also having the CHAs, that is known as the custom house agent or the clearing house agent. And this clearing house agent or custom house agents, they are helping the exporters in carrying out the procedural part of the export or import. Suppose if the imports are there, then they can also be helpful where to pay custom duty, where to proceed, what are the forms to be completed, etc. And in that case, the appointment of the CHA can also be initiated by writing letter. Then they are also, we can say that they are having the permission, or we can say that license is also available to such CHA agents.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, friends, now we will see how the import-export correspondence takes place. So, as you can see on the slide, first of all, the first step is inviting quotations from the exporters. So, as I mentioned in the earlier, in the beginning of the lecture, for example, any importer who wants to purchase the goods, who wants to buy the goods, so naturally he would like to know about the quality of the goods, about various terms and conditions like the prices of the goods, the rate of discount to be allowed to him on the goods, or maybe the time to be taken in delivering the goods. So he would like to know all these details from the exporter. So he will write a letter of inquiry addressing to the exporter. So in another way we can call it, he will invite quotations from the exporters. The exporter, on the other hand, he will supply the quotations to the importers. Then, as soon as, for example, the importer receives the quotations from the exporter, But it is possible that he may not be all the time, he may not agree with the condition, all the conditions, terms and conditions offered by the exporter. So he may want some changes, he may want to negotiate in some of the conditions. For example, if 10% commission discount, trade discount is offered by the exporter, he may wish to have 15% or 20% commission or discount. So there is a stage for negotiation. So he can discuss the changes in terms and conditions wherever necessary. After the negotiations are over, he will place the order. Now, my friend Professor Trivedi will explain to you what is the system for international correspondence as an exporter.
Now, whatever Joshi Sahib has discussed, I wish to add that one important aspect is so far as the charges are concerned, that general insurance and the ECGC, that is Export Credit and Guarantee Corporation charges. Now, these charges are generally borne by the exporter, but if the terms and conditions are such that they are to be borne by the importer, then necessary letter or necessary terms and conditions are to be added while discussing while finalizing the export order. Now, so far as the international correspondence as an exporter is concerned, now receiving inquiry from the importer. Now, first of all, the importer may gather the information about the product, about the country, about the exporter, etc. And if he is in need of that particular item or particular goods, then he will approach the exporter by getting the necessary contact details, and he will first of all write a letter to the exporter about his wishes. And if the exporter is agreeable, then there can be a series of communication with regard to the terms and conditions, with regard to the prices, with regard to the other charges. And apart from that, suppose if the item is we can say that it is a heavy item, like heavy machinery, and for manufacturing it may take certain time. So he may just give the details that it may take time of 3 months, 6 months, etc. And for that matter, he is prepared to give delivery after certain times. So this type of the correspondence can be initiated by the importer from the exporter. And second thing, that replying to it and sending to the quotations. Now, quotations, here we are having the two different types. Here the quotations are in the form of we can say that kacha invoice, or it is in the form of invoice. And the second thing, that in certain cases special quotations are available. Different countries are having different systems. Here we can say that commercial invoice, but in USA it is known as the invoice. Here we say that invoice is just a kacha invoice in which the final details about the prices and other charges are not available. So it depends from country to country, and in that case necessary clarification has to be sought from. If he is an importer, then it should be sought from the exporter. If he is exporter, then he can also gather the information from the importer. Now, responding to the negotiation of the terms and conditions that we have already discussed in the letter of credit, that what are the charges that are to be borne by the importer, what are the charges that are to be borne by the exporter. These are to be added in the letter. Now, so far as the procedure of import.
Yes, till now we have discussed how the correspondence as in import-export trade takes place. Now we will see on the procedure of the import order and the procedure of the export order. As you can see on the slide, after receiving the order, the exporter of the particular foreign country proceeds to execute the order. So, the stages for inquiry, sending quotations, negotiations, all are over now. Now there is a stage for importing the goods. So, after receiving the order, the exporter of the particular foreign country proceeds to execute the order. Then the goods are packed carefully and as per the instructions of the importer, they are shipped to the port of the importer's choice. For example, a businessman from Ahmedabad, naturally he would like to receive the goods on any port in Gujarat, maybe Mundra port, or any nearest port to Gujarat, maybe Mumbai, or any businessman from South India, he may have choice to receive the goods at the Chennai port or at the Vishakhapatnam port. So the goods, according to the importer's choice, they will be forwarded or they will be sent. After sending the goods, all documents such as invoice, bill of lading, insurance receipt, etc. are forwarded to the purchaser by separate mail. Friends, invoice, that is the bill of lading, that is we can call it in short BL. That is the shipping company gives the certificate that the goods we have taken the goods in our custody to forward it to the importer, and the insurance receipt, because the goods are sent by sea way, by આપણે જોઈએ છીએ એમ દરિયાઈ માર્ગે આવે છે એટલે એમાં જોખમ પણ રહેલું છે મિત્રો. સો દે હેવ ટુ ટેક ઇન્સ્યોરન્સ ઓલ્સો. ધ ઇન્સ્યોરન્સ receipt, all these documents, important documents, are forwarded to the purchaser by separate mail after the goods are forwarded in a ship or by a ship. So once the importer gets the shipping documents, he is entitled to take the delivery of goods as soon as the ship in which the goods are loaded arrives the port. So he will present the documents to the shipping corporation from where he is supposed to receive the goods. Then he will, on presenting the documents like the delivery order or bill of lading, he will receive the goods. So the importer undergoes certain formalities before taking delivery of the goods, such as customs clearance, unloading, etc. Then the delivery order or the bill of lading endorsed by the exporter is given to the port authorities with the signature of the importer for the release of the goods. So once these documents, the delivery order, bill of lading with a signature by the importer, are submitted to the shipping corporation, they will release the goods and the importer can take the goods to his home or to his godown. So finally the importer pays the relevant import duty, for example customs duty, etc., as this is the international correspondence. So he will pay the relevant import duties and he will take the charge of his goods. As you can see it, after payment he can have the goods with him.
Now here in this case I wish to add one thing, that import order, there are certain exporters who are simply on the strength of the import order, they are exporting the goods, whereas when when they do not have a confidence or when they do not have trust or when they do not have any knowledge about the importer, then in that case they insist for the letter of credit. Now coming to the export order, now once the before exporting the goods, exporter is supposed to go through the contents of the letter of credit, and as per the letter of credit he has to adhere to the terms and conditions. First of all, the after packing, labeling, marking, etc. are over, and before that he will have to ask the custom officer, export inspection agency, he will have to write to the export inspection agency in which in that letter he will have to discuss about the letter contents of the letter of credit, then the order, necessary fees, etc. Once this letter is received by the EIA, export inspection agency, then the custom officer will come, he will carry out the examination of the goods so far as the quantity, quality and other contents so far as the value and value is concerned, and once he is satisfied, thereafter he will give the order for the packing, labeling, etc. And once this is over, then the same will be transported either to the container depot or to the seaport. And once the goods reach the ship, at that time the exporter or the export house clearing house agent, they will have to write to the port authority with regard to the arrival of the goods. Then necessary charges are required to pay to the port charges. The port office will issue a receipt in that regard, and thereafter he will go to the preventing officer near the sea, near the ship, where he will again he will. So this communication part, what Joshi Sahib has discussed, that at every stage the communication, the later correspondence is a must. If one wants to be a very good importer or exporter, then this art is very important. He will be writing to the preventing officer, then preventing officer will hand over the goods to the ship, and once he will issue a MAT receipt, that MAT receipt will be handed over to the shipping company, and shipping company will hand over the shipping documents to the exporter, stating that the goods which are mentioned in the bill of lading have been kept inside the ship for the purpose of export. And if any defects or damages are found, then again it will be the responsibility of the exporter to ensure that necessary communication has to be initiated to the importer, that during the course of the export certain documents are found damaged or certain shortage is there, and in that case it will be a mutual correspondence between importer and exporter, for which the importer will write to his bank to the exporter's bank, and in turn whatever deficiencies are there, that will be condoned. Now the shipping authority, it is just a procedure. What we have said, that at the time of loading inside the goods, necessary formalities are completed by MAT. It is known as a MAT receipt. MAT is a name of the captain of the ship, and he is signing everything, whatever goods that have been received by him. Now, so far as the bill of lading and shipping company is concerned, now shipping documents, let me add, sir, 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
That shipping bill is nothing but a summary of all the documents which are necessary to be attached with that particular document. That is the bill of lading, commercial bill, invoice, VAT list, certificate of origin, which is issued by the Chamber of Commerce, or sometimes if it is insisted, then it is also issued by the Export Inspection Agency. So these documents are attached to the shipping bill, and thereafter these shipping bills are cleared by the Custom Department, and thereafter it is handed over to the bank for finance purpose and for onward transmission to the importer's bank. Now, sir, so far as the procedure of export order, insurance. Yes. Now, insurance is, so we are having the two types of the insurance, sir. We are having the general insurance, or we are also having the ECGC, Export Credit and Guarantee Corporation. They are also insuring the goods which are meant for the export. Now, the general insurance is the exporter has to insure the goods. He will have to write to the concerned insurance company that we are having these types of the goods. Now, these are to be insured, for which the insurance company will submit the necessary details of the charges which are to be insured, and this insurance will be valid from the place of manufacturer up to the port of dispatch. So these charges, whether these charges are to be borne by the importer or exporter, that the importer or exporter will have to clarify during the course of the correspondence. Now, second thing, that once the goods are kept inside the ship, then the ECGC will take the responsibility. ECGC is also having two types of the policies. One is the commercial policy and another one is the political policies. So commercial policies are in case of the certain with regard to the dispute, so far the charges are concerned, so far as the rates are concerned, and in spite of the fact that this has already been cleared in the letter of credit or communication, then suppose if the importer fails and importer's bank may fail, in many cases this has happened because there are certain countries which are very poor or which are lacking the funds. So in that case, the ECGC will come and he will give the shelter, so far as he will compensate for the damage. That is commercial review. And political risk. Political risk is such that there are certain countries where suppose political changes are there, suppose mutiny is there at that time, and there can be certain change in the rules and regulations of the import and export. So there can be so many, because the details are very long, and so far as this both the risks are concerned, it is necessary that the exporter has to insure his goods by writing a letter both to the general insurance company as well as the ECGC. And second thing, that now the banks have come forward that suppose if this ECGC premium is not paid by the exporter, then the bank itself will also cover this risk by making payment of the insurance premium by debiting the customer's exporter's account. So this facility is available. So exporters are nowadays totally secured when they export their goods. But in that case, every time, at every stage, clear communication, clear correspondence, and so far as all the facts are necessary, that has to be adhered to.
Yes, friends. So, I think in this 1 hour lecture, we have tried to explain what is import-export correspondence, what is the format of letter writing for import-export trade or business, what is the procedure for import-export trade. So, if you have any questions, you can ask, you can forward your questions to the Bisect Studio. So before till then, we would like to discuss several general points for letter writing, which can be applied to any letter writing, any business correspondence, maybe domestic correspondence, maybe international correspondence. So these are called 6 important C's of business correspondence. As you can see on your screen, they are clarity, correctness, conciseness, completeness, consideration, that is U attitude, and courtesy. Clarity means one should be clear while writing the letter. He should be clear while writing or while drafting the letter. There should be no ornamental language, or there should be, as mentioned by Tridi sir, we should use a natural language, simple language. Because clearly written messages, they have better chances to have better impact on the reader. Then the correctness. The letter should be correct as far as its form is concerned, language is concerned, structure or grammar or spellings are concerned. We should not there should not be any spelling mistakes or grammatical mistakes in our letter. Then the third point is conciseness. To be concise means to be brief, means to use as many few words as possible. If it is possible to complete our message with one line, there is no need to write 2 lines. જેમ મહાવીર સ્વામી ભગવાને કહ્યું છે ને મિત્રો, વાણી અને પાણી ઘીની જેમ વાપરો. એટલે કે વાણી અને પાણી બંનેની કિંમત સમજવી જોઈએ. જો 5 શબ્દોમાં આપણે મેસેજ કવર કરી શકતા હોઈએ તો there is no need to use the 6 words. Then the completeness. Your letter should have all the complete details to the point. No important points should be left out from your letter. Then the 5th point is consideration. That means taking other people's feelings into consider. or into consideration. So our letter should be drafted keeping the customer in the center. We should use you or your instead of I and we. So our letter should be concentrated on the customer. It should be customer oriented. The American businessmen call it you attitude. And the last but not the least point in these 6 important C's of business correspondence, that is courtesy, that is humbleness, politeness. Any businessman must be, should be courteous or polite while drafting letters also. Even the letters of collection, મિત્રો ઉઘરાણીના પત્રો હોય ને એમાં પણ આપણી ભાષા, it should be very courteous, it should be very humble, it should be very polite. Because in business, if you lose temper, naturally you will lose your customer, and ultimately that will result in losing your business. That will badly harm your business. So one should be courteous while drafting letters. Friends, I thank you, Professor Trivedi, for being with us for this lecture. Thank you all.
I am also thankful to Joshi Sahib for inviting me on this very important topic, and it will be a pleasure if anybody wishes to have some more clarification or some more material or some more information. The email address will also be provided to you by Joshi Sahib as and when one wishes. It will be my pleasure to provide you the same.